Welcome to the Foundry by Forge College. So today's explainer takes that proverbial crash test dummy we built back in our designing attack simulations lesson and, well, we're gonna run it into a brick wall, over and over again, just to see exactly what breaks. We're finally moving out of the design phase and getting right into the execution and interpretation phase of our smart contract security audit capstone. Let's get into it. Here's the blueprint for today's engineering crash test. We'll look at 1. Crash testing smart contracts, 2. Establishing the baseline, 3. Adding controlled chaos, 4. Scoring impact versus likelihood, and 5. The prioritization table. Section 1. Crash testing smart contracts, setting up the test lab. Okay, let's dive right in. You wouldn't test a car's safety by crashing it just one single time under perfect sunny conditions, right? No way. And we absolutely do not test smart contracts that way either. Instead, we use what's called a scenario analysis matrix. Basically, this is all about structuring our test variations. We systematically isolate exactly how catastrophic a vulnerability is, that's the impact, and how easy it is to actually trigger, that's the exploitability. It completely takes the guesswork out of our audits. But hey, before we start joyriding and smashing our code to pieces, we need a clean workspace. First up, we create a dedicated results folder to capture our JSON outputs from each run. Second, we add a blank Markdown or CSV table, which, as you'll see, eventually becomes our prioritization table. And third, we prepare a manifest. Think of this manifest as a declaration of the 5 specific attack scenarios derived directly from our threat model that we actually plan to test today. Now, to keep our lab super organized, we give our tests really explicit names, something like Scenario 1 Reentrancy. You want to be strictly specific here so you don't get your wires crossed when you're analyzing all that data later. Oh, and before running the full suite, always run a quick dry check, kind of like a smoke test, just to make absolutely sure your lab equipment is fully operational and your environment hasn't, completely imploded. Section 2. Establishing the baseline. 3 runs, no changes. So, to get truly solid data, we absolutely must establish a strict control group before we introduce any rogue variables. We do this by running 3 completely identical baseline iterations of our scenario. Why 3? Well, we need to capture the raw JSON output to see if the exploit consistently drains funds or if it occasionally fails due to some random hidden factor. Consistency is everything here, guys. 1 time could totally be a fluke, but 3 times? That's a pattern. From each of those 3 baseline runs, we meticulously record some very specific outcomes. Did the execution actually complete? Did it meet the success condition for the exploit? What were the exact revert messages? What was the median gas used? And absolutely critical here, what were the final state deltas? Like, did balances or ownership flags actually change? Meticulous record-keeping like this is just a fantastic habit to practice in isolated testnets, much like the hands-on labs you see across Forge College's learning tracks. Section 3. Adding controlled chaos, the noise variables. All right, we have our baseline, which is great, but let's be real. Real-world attacks don't happen in a pristine, static vacuum. So we run a secondary pass. And here, we change just one of these controlled noise variables at a time. We might tweak the attacker gas limits, alter the nonce ordering, switch between batched and single calls, or even mess with the timing offsets. We're basically crashing the car again, but this time in a massive rainstorm or on a treacherous icy road, just to see if the exploit still holds up. And this right here is where we separate the trivial hacks from the incredibly complex ones. If an exploit only works under a super narrow timing offset, you're going to see your test start to flake out. That divergence, that is crucial evidence. It points to what we call conditional exploitability. Basically, it means the hack isn't guaranteed every single time. The attacker literally needs the stars to align perfectly to pull it off. Section 4. Scoring impact versus likelihood, the 1 to 5 scale. Now for the really crucial part, figuring out how to objectively score the wreckage we've just created in our test lab. We use a straightforward 1 to 5 scale. Over on the left side, we have impact. A level 5 impact would be a catastrophic, irreversible fund loss based on the worst-case state changes we observed. Then, on the right side, we balance that against likelihood. So if we ran the simulation and it succeeded 3 out of 3 times with a dirt cheap attacker cost, bam, that's a 5 for likelihood. The exploit is trivially easy. But you've got to be aware of these common debugging traps. First off, do not confuse one lucky test run with a high likelihood score. If it took, say, 50 tries to get it to work just once, the likelihood is actually very low. Second, always capture your pre- and post-state snapshots, like block numbers. And third, ensure you're using the exact same ABIs and compiler artifacts. Mismatched build artifacts will produce inconsistent revert messages and drive you absolutely crazy thinking you have a flaky test when really you just have a bad build. Section 5. The Prioritization Table. Compiling the evidence. Let's see how this builds our final defensible artifact. Okay, this prioritization table is the ultimate goal of our entire explainer today. We're mapping each scenario directly to concrete evidence. Take a look at our reentrancy scenario here, which had a 3 out of 3 success frequency. We link that directly to our summary JSON evidence file. We give it an impact of 5, a likelihood of 5, which naturally makes it a priority 1 issue for our final audit report. Every single row in your table should look this clear and be this undeniable. And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute golden rule of our capstone. Scoring is evidence first. We don't guess in Web3 security. We just don't operate on hunches. Your impact and likelihood scores absolutely must be anchored directly in the JSON summaries and state depths that we observed during our controlled simulations. This is what transforms your table from a completely subjective opinion column into an ironclad decision record. Before you go and finalize your top 3 priorities for mitigation, run through this quick checklist. 1. Confirm your evidence files actually match the outcomes you quoted. 2. Ensure your impact score maps to actual observed worst-case state deltas, not just some theoretical what-if. And 3. Verify that your likelihood score reflects the actual observed frequency and complexity of the exploit in your lab. All right, so you've crashed the cars, you've gathered the data, scored the wreckage, and now you have your top evidence-backed priorities. But the obvious question now is, how do you actually fix them? Well, this perfectly sets the stage for what comes next in our track. Building risk mitigations and recommendations, where we'll take these exact prioritized risks and transform them into actual, battle-tested code fixes. Remember, if you don't test your code in the rain, hackers will gladly do it for you during a hurricane. Thanks so much for diving into this explainer with me. To master more smart contract security techniques, practice these exact simulations yourself, and explore a wealth of other Web3 topics, be sure to visit forge.college. See you in the next one.